Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. How are you? You have the honor of being the last uh, group of people who we're having the public consultations with. As you know that we have been going around Fiji for the past few weeks and having public consultations with both adults, and public consultations. We've had public consultations with people of the private sector, and we've been to every single town in Fiji, where we've also met all the schools, and all the schools in their respective areas came to these consultations. So today's gathering is the last one that we're having in the round of consultations. We've just come back from Sabu. What's actually going to happen is that once we finish the consultations, we're already in the process of putting together some of the figures, some of the priorities together. In the next few weeks, we'll finalize this. And then the budget actually gets delivered on the 29th of June at 7:30 p.m. We present the budget to Parliament. Now, once the budget is presented to Parliament, then we have to, by law, wait for about a week before Parliament then reconvenes and we debate the budget. So in the debate in the budget, we go line by line. For example, this school, Labasa College, gets money from government every year. So if, for example, Labasa College in the budget book, maybe we can have a copy of that. So this is it's called the budget estimates. This is what's presented to Parliament. So in this, you have the different ministries, and you have, for example, this one is Ministry of Women, Children and Poverty Alleviation. They have different areas of expenditure. So, for example, over here it says expenses of juveniles in the institutional services. So then people can actually stand up and ask, why are you giving this $20,000? What is this $20,000 for? You're giving Labasa College $50,000. What is it for? How are they going to use it? These are the kind of questions that get asked in Parliament. And then budget, of course, gets approved by Parliament. The Parliament then, once the budget is approved, then the budget comes into effect from the 1st of August. Our budget year, or financial year in Fiji now for the Fijian government, is from the 1st of August to the 31st of July the following year. This is why the budget is called the 2017-2018 budget, because it falls into 2 calendar years. Now, in these sessions, what we do, we present a very short slide to you to give you an understanding of what are the things we take into consideration by way of background as to what is happening in the economy. What are the areas of priority? So you actually also have an understanding when we actually deliver the budget. If we talk about foreign reserves, if we talk about debt to GDP ratio, you actually know exactly what it means. You can make sense of what is happening. And once I've done the short presentation, you can ask any questions. If during my presentations you are confused about something, you don't understand, please feel free to ask, interrupt and ask. We want it to be as informal as possible. I'm not your teacher. I'm not here to try and dictate things to you. I'm here to impart information. I'm also here to hear from you. Now, why are we having this consultation with the schools? Because today, in Fiji, 69.4% of the population is below the age of 40. So you people are in the majority, I'm in the minority because I'm over 40. Right? So in a few years' time, in a very short few years' time, you'll be graduating from university. You'll be finishing high school. You'll become mothers and fathers. Hopefully not very soon, but you'll become mothers and fathers. You'll work. You'll own property. You'll also become leaders, whether in your home, in your communities, in your area, in your profession. Some of you may go to Parliament. But you people will be the bulk of the population that will drive the country, because you are in the majority. So we need to be able to hear from you. We need to be able to know what is it that you want. We need to be able to also empower you with the knowledge, because it is only through this sort of exchange will we be able to put in place good policies. You see, every country in this world that is successful has only been successful because they have thought 10, 20, 50 years down the track. We don't see up till our noses. You don't just think up till next year. You don't just think about one issue. Some people say, oh, we don't think anything is good because the road to my house is not good. But there are other things you have to take into consideration. There are other things you need to think about. What makes your life whole? What are the things that makes you function as an individual and makes your locality, makes your country function properly? So that's the reason why we are here. These people. आप लोग कह रहे हैं कि भीतर भेज जाओ, खड़ा है, भीतर भेजो, pictures sir. Okay, so we'll have the first slide. Now, I hope, can you all see the screen? Okay, please let me know. Those of you behind the post, you can please move, don't hesitate to move. We all talk about economic growth. What is economic growth? Economic growth is about the economy obviously growing. Why is it important for the economy to grow? When the economy is growing, you know there's a lot of activity in the economy. The higher the growth, the better it is. So when there's a lot of activity in the economy, it means that people are spending money. It means that there's going to be creation of jobs. I've been asked several times by a lot of the students saying, what can you do to guarantee us jobs? The answer is, one of the best ways that we can guarantee you jobs is to make sure that the economy is growing. There's economy growing, there's economic activity, people will need services. When people need services, they need people to deliver those services. So that's why it's very important. If you see here, the Fijian economy has been growing now every year for the past 7 years. Consecutive growth. In other words, every year it's been growing. Year after year after year. This is only the second time in our history that the Fijian economy has grown consecutively for 7 years. Which actually is good, but it's also quite sad that why didn't it happen before? If we had consistency in economic growth, then it would have meant that there would have been a lot more economic activity. We expect that the economy to grow at least for the next projected 2 or 3 more years. These figures are put together by the Reserve Bank of Fiji. They are the independent assessors of economic growth, etc. Now, normally, the economy slows down when you have a cyclone or it goes into negative growth. You can see that. You can see over here the economy went down from 3.6 to 2%. Why? Because we had Cyclone Winston. That's why we don't like cyclones. We don't like cyclones. People die. People's homes get damaged. People's livelihoods get affected. It makes the price of vegetables and fruits expensive. And it also means that government has to spend a lot more money to rebuild things. And it slows down the economy. Now, what are the things that actually contributes to the economy? There are different sectors in the economy. Agriculture, as you can see, contributes 0.34%. But fisheries and forestry is only 0.01%. Very low. That means there's a lot of potential. It also means that maybe certain things that are supposed to be happening is not happening. Manufacturing is very large. It's 0.61%. We make a lot of things in Fiji now. Over here in Labasa, you make mops, you make all sorts of other things. We make biscuit, we make flour, we make soap, we make sewage pipes, we make water pipes, a lot of factories, we make garments. So manufacturing contributes 0.61%. Construction, 0.44, contributed to the economy. Why is construction good? When you need to build a building, assuming you need to put up this building, you need somebody to come and dig the foundation. You need somebody to lay the steel. You need somebody to lay the concrete. You need somebody to put the tiles. You need somebody to put the electrical cables. You need somebody to paint it. You need somebody to put the roof. All these different people are required to come and make the building. When all these different people are required, they get money. They get paid wages. When they get money in their pocket, they go downtown. They might buy Chicken Express. Or they might buy some clothes. Some people may go and buy money or buy a second-hand car. So the money has a multiplier effect. The construction industry has a multiplier effect. So money spins in the economy. That's why construction is good. Electricity and water contributed 0.1%, and mining was very low, 0.02. The services sector is the financial services, that's banking, insurance, etc., contributes 0.45. Transport, 0.41. Wholesale and retail, this is your shops, etc. And then you have accommodation, it's the hotel industry and the accommodation sector. Now, the trick of any government is, or good government, will ensure that we have different things contributing to the economy. Many things contribute to economic growth. If you are only dependent on one or two things, say assuming we're only dependent on agriculture and say fisheries. Now, if there is a cyclone and it affects your agriculture, then of course the economy is not going to grow. You suffer very badly. The example that I give always in these sessions, assuming that these 5 people here sitting in the front, over here, these 5 people here, they all work in one family, they're all from one family. Now, all of these people in the front row. Assuming all these people belong to one family, and assuming out of all of them, only 2 of them work. The others stay at home. And they depend on them for their source of income or livelihood. Now, if one of them gets sick, they'll all really suffer badly. Both of them get sick, they have no income. But if all of them worked, and even if 3 of them got sick, they can still depend on and live off the salaries of the others. So, as a government, our strategy is that we have many areas that contribute to economic growth. If 1 or 2 of them get affected, we can still depend on the others. In the same way in Fiji at the moment, tourism is big. It contributes nearly a third towards our GDP. But only 2 countries contribute nearly 70% of our tourism arrivals. Australians make up 51%. The New Zealanders, or Kiwis as we call them, make up about 17%. So nearly 70% come from only 2 countries. So there is a problem. The problem is, if the Australian and New Zealand economies don't do well, and less of them travel, 70% of our tourism arrivals will get affected. This is why we want more Indians, we want more Chinese, we want more North Americans, we want more Europeans to come to Fiji as tourists. So, if 1 or 2 of the countries don't come as much, we can depend on the others. It's called mitigating your risk. You have to spread your risk. So that's what we are doing as a government. And this is why you see in the budgets, the announcements we make, the incentives we give, is essentially geared towards that. Now, the Reserve Bank, when they make these assessments to see whether the economy is doing well, these are the things they look at. They look at the value, excuse me, value of building permits issued. In other words, how many people have applied to put up new buildings? Obviously, when people apply to put new buildings, that means they're going to invest. That means there will be more construction. The amount of construction that's actually in place. Domestic cement sales went up 11.1%. People don't buy cement to keep it underneath their house. People buy cement to build. That means when people are building, that means the economy is moving. Imports of investment goods. These are things like machinery and other plant and equipment that we import from overseas. A lot of this machinery is not made in Fiji. When people are importing that, that means factories are being expanded, a lot more things will be done, a lot more manufacturing will take place. Government capex. Capex means capital expenditure. Government capital expenditure increased by 7.8%. That means when we build things, obviously it also creates jobs, it creates infrastructure. There are a lot of people who don't have electricity, didn't have electricity before. They now have electricity. Now, for example, the person who sells fish by the roadside, if he goes and catches fish, and he sells the fish by the roadside, you drive along, and you may buy some of his fish, you may not buy some of his fish. At the end of the day, if there's some fish left over, and he's got no refrigeration, he will get very desperate, assuming it's very hot. Because if he does not eat the fish himself, or if he does not sell the fish, maybe half price or 10% of the price, the fish will go bad. But if he has a cooler, if he has refrigeration, if he does not sell the fish, he can put the fish in the cooler, in the refrigerator. Next morning he stands by the roadside, throws some water on it, you go buy, oh, fresh fish, and you'll buy it. Right? So, by bringing electricity, you have actually improved his level of income. Because before, with no electricity, he would have had to eat it himself, so there's no income. Or, and he's probably tired of eating fish every day, or he would have sold the fish at half the price or 1/10 of the price. So investment by government in capital expenditure is very important. New investment lending went up by 65.7%, sorry. Lending for real estate, lending for building and construction went up by 37%. Construction sector growth grew by 14.6%. So these are all the areas that are growing, which contributes to the economic robustness. Consumption indicators. These are the things that we consume for personal items. Now, new vehicle registration went up by 27.5%. In other words, brand new vehicles, new ones, improved by 27.5%. Second-hand vehicles increased by 7.8%. New lending to wholesale retail went up by 13.2%. Imports of consumption goods. Nearly everything that we have in Fiji is imported. This gentleman here is wearing the sandal. This sandal is probably made overseas. He's got that pen. That pen is probably made overseas. The shirt is probably sewn in Fiji, but the fabric, the cloth, comes from overseas. Saw somebody with a lot of gel in their hair. The gel that you have is not made in Fiji. It's made overseas. Those of you who are prefects, it says head girl. The engraving is done in Fiji, but that material that you have, the shield, is not made in Fiji. It comes from overseas. I'm wearing this watch. It's not made in Fiji. It comes from overseas. So the reason I'm telling you this is because it also means when you buy things from overseas, you have to have foreign currency, which I'll come to later on. But when you have a lot of consumption goods being bought, that means people are spending money. PAYE collection. This is taxes that people pay when they are working. Now in Fiji before, only a few years ago, if you earned more than $8,600, you had to pay tax, starting off at 15%. What we did, we changed the policy a few years ago. We said, now, unless you earn $16,000 or more, then you pay tax. So the person before who was earning $14,000 had to pay tax, now takes the entire $14,000 home and spends that money on themselves. So this is one way of helping people at the low income level. So when PAYE increases, collections increase, that means people are either getting paid more or more people are being employed. That's why the collection of tax goes up. New job advertisements went up by 15.1%. Personal remittances. Personal remittances means people sending money from overseas. So we have Fijians playing rugby in France and various other places. We have people in the British Army. We have your friends and relatives who may live in Australia and New Zealand may send you money. We have Fijians working as nurses, as caregivers in the West Coast of North America, in the Middle East. We have our people working as security personnel in the Middle East. People going off for seasonal work, whatever it is. These are the people sending money back home. That increased by 5%. Now, personal remittances is our second largest foreign exchange earner. First being tourism, this is the second one. And new consumption lending. This is people going out and borrowing money from banks to buy personal items. Whether they're buying, cars or other things for their own personal consumption. Okay, this is what I was telling you, new vehicle registration. You see, in 2005, 6,088 second-hand vehicles were registered. You compare that to last year, 10,152 new vehicles. 3,363 new vehicles were registered, now nearly 5,000. You can see there are a lot more cars on the road. People in Fiji, when they do well, They also want to say, oh, my son is doing well, he bought his first car. My daughter is doing well, they bought the first car. If you go to Viti Levu, various parts in Viti Levu, even if you travel from Nasinu 9 miles to Suva, it can take you an hour and a half. There's so much traffic now. So this has obviously gone up. Over here, it started increasing because we zero-rated duty on many motor vehicles, so we reduced duty also. So at the moment, if you buy a vehicle less than 2,500 cc, you pay lesser duty than what you did before. But if you buy a 3,000 cc vehicle, a personal vehicle, you have to pay very high duty, plus you pay $20,000 more. The thinking is that if you are rich, you can afford to buy a 3,000 cc BMW, we want you to pay $20,000 extra, plus more duty. So we can make it cheaper for the person who buys the smaller vehicle. So we take money from the rich, so we give more benefits to people in the lower income level. Retail sales. This looks at sales in shops. Reserve Bank of Fiji monitors this. Obviously, when sales go down, that means people aren't spending money. They either don't have enough money, or they don't feel very comfortable, or don't feel very confident. Normally, people spend money when they feel good. Right? So you feel good, you go and buy more Chicken Express, you'll buy more clothes, you have a greater source of income. So you can see on average, retail sales have gone up by 7.1%. Next, please. Inflation. This is the measuring inflation as in the cost of goods. You can see in the past, since 2014 at least, we have tried to keep inflation relatively down. It's been below 2% here, but that went up. You can see it shoot up because of the cyclone. Yangona today costs $120 a kilo. Used to be $40, $50. Some people still drink it at the same amount, even though it's still $120 a kilo. In Suva, after Cyclone Winston, my elder son likes bananas. I used to go in bananas. For a small bunch like this, used to cost $20. Today, the small bunch of bananas has come down at $5. So you can see the inflation is coming down. Because when you have a cyclone, things get damaged. Long beans in Suva used to cost $5 after Cyclone Winston. So the farmers whose crops did not get damaged made a lot of money. Sold it at $5. High demand, low supply. So when supply comes into the market, then prices will stabilize. Yongona, of course, will stay expensive for a while because a Yongona tree or plant takes about 7 years to mature. You expect that to remain quite high for a period of time. So don't drink Yongona. It's going to save money. Now, foreign reserves. So, like I highlighted these things, this young man is wearing a watch here. All of these things, they come from different parts of the world. So assuming this watch comes from US, we have to trade in US dollars. This mic may be made in Japan. They will sell it to you in Japanese yen. Assuming this belt that I'm wearing comes from New Zealand, you need New Zealand dollars. That's the money they'll trade in. So you need what you call foreign reserves to be able to do your buying of goods from overseas. International benchmark shows that to see whether you are healthy as far as your foreign reserves are concerned, you see this dotted line here, at 4 months, this is the number of months, it says that you should have at least 4 months worth of foreign reserves. That's a good benchmark. If you have 4 months, then people look at you more favorably, other countries. In 2005, the foreign reserves was only $549 million in Fiji. Today we have $2.1 billion of foreign reserves. A lot more than what we have ever had. The highest it's ever been in Fiji. So these things also, your foreign reserves, helps determine the interest rates. So, Fiji Airways, as you know, bought those brand new A330 Airbuses. Those things cost about $300 million each. Now, so they've gone and borrowed money from some European banks also. So when the European banks look at it, they'll say, oh, this country's foreign reserves is pretty good. That means they have the ability to repay us. There won't be any foreign currency restrictions. So then the interest rate that charged Fiji Airways will be less than if your foreign reserves were down here. I hope you understand. If you have any questions, please ask me. Fiscal deficit. All governments in Fiji since independence, from Ratumara's government, the SVT government, SDL government, and all the other governments, they have always run a deficit. In other words, because we're a developing country, we have always spent more than what we actually have. Because we're a developing country, we're a former colonial country. As you know, when you're colonized by another country, they don't really spend too much money in your country, they simply take money out of your country. That's what colonialism means. If you see most of where the expatriates used to live during the colonial times, up on the hills, you know, the FSC compound, they had all the best services. Everybody else down the road did not have anything. So as a post-independent country, we have to come along and build roads, tahsil roads, put water pipes, sewage pipes, electricity and all of that. You have to spend more money. But it's a question of how much debt do you incur. It's a question of whether the amount of money you're spending is being spent in the right places. Are we wasting that money? So this is what you call a deficit. See, zero here. If you have zero, that means you have a balanced budget. The amount of money you spend and the amount of money you collect or you have is balanced. If you go a little bit above, it's what you call a surplus budget. Everything below is a deficit. So, the longer the line, the worse off you are. The shorter the line, of course, the better off you are. But it's a balancing act. You don't want to make it too short, otherwise all of you, like today we were in Sabu Sabu, nearly every single submission by every single student was, please build this for us. Please make a hall for us. Please connect us with electricity. Some of them don't have electricity. Please connect us with water. Please tahsil the road in front of the school. Please build the road to our school, make it better. Some of you, I'm sure, will make some submissions regarding that. We spend $21 million a year giving to bus companies to bring you to school, subsidized school bus fares. All your teachers' salaries, even though you may be privately or faith-based schools or whatever it is, we pay for the salaries of all the teachers in Fiji. You now don't pay any school fees. You now have TELs, you have scholars, you have toppers. All of that costs money. We, of course, have prioritized it. So, we have to look at the deficit. As you can see, our goal has been to reduce the deficit. We had a small cyclone here, and of course we started reducing the deficit again here. This is caused by Winston. If Cyclone Winston had not occurred, we would not have had to borrow $220 million. So if Winston had not occurred, this line probably would have been sitting here. Our deficit would have been lower. Our deficit is currently for this year sitting at 4.7%. This is why we don't like cyclones, as I said earlier on. Now, government also makes money. We have to make money. Because if we don't make money, everything that we spend will be borrowed. So we have to make sure that when you people may have a fine, make sure you pay the fine. That fine we collect and use it on government services. We have tourists who come to Fiji, or anybody that leaves Fiji, they have to pay $200 departure tax. People who earn money, companies, a lot of businesses, they have to, well, everybody needs to pay taxes. The businesses have to pay taxes, what you call corporate tax. Individuals who earn lots of money, they have to pay tax also. We collect that. So government has been very vigilant. In other words, we're being very stringent about collecting tax. Just by comparison, in 2004, the government made a revenue of $1.1 billion. Today, we collect $3.1 billion in revenue. We have to be smarter about how we collect taxes, about how we collect revenue. It's not all about taxes. Because the higher this is, then we have to borrow less. You borrow less, that means your debt sustainability is a lot better. What are the things that contribute to to the revenue? Direct taxes, this is your taxes individual on your incomes, people who earn over $16,000, people who pay company tax, VAT. When you pay VAT, we collect that money, and then we use that money to provide for services. Customs. This is the certain goods, like this watch. When it comes to Fiji, the people who bring this in have to pay duty on it. The shopkeepers, they buy it, or the wholesaler, they have to pay duty. We find that still a lot of businesses are stealing from the system. When they bring in, say, $10 million worth of goods, they'll declare it's worth only $2 million, so they pay less duty. So as we say, they're chorrowing from the system. We have to make sure they stop doing that. So we've made the laws a lot harder, made it a lot more stringent. We have higher penalties. If you get caught stealing from the system, we want you to pay the penalty. So we can increase the revenue, because it's not fair for people to steal from the system. If everybody is honest, we'll have a lot more money. And unfortunately in Fiji, in particular after 1987, we've got a culture of people just looking after their own selves. They don't think about the country. They're always thinking about how to make a quick buck. But by doing that quick buck approach, the country loses out. We of course collect taxes from, as I mentioned, say departure tax, stamp duty, fees and charges, water resource tax. What we've done here for you, we've put together the amount of money we spend on social protection, access to justice, education, health and infrastructure development. What is social protection? If you're a single mother, you have abandoned children, you have people who live below the poverty line, we pay social welfare benefits. We give food voucher to rural pregnant women. Our whole idea is that if they get better nourishment when they are pregnant, the babies they give birth to will be healthier. If the babies are not healthier, it causes emotional and physical stress both to the mother and the baby, but also means a lot more pressure on the health system. You have to spend a lot more money to look after the baby. So these are some of the things that we have started. We also started, a lot of people you may know did not ever get FNPF, because a lot of people are farmers, they're fishermen, they live in the village, they do subsistence living. So they never worked for anybody, so they never had FNPF. So when they get older, they have no pension. A lot of people depend on their children or their grandchildren. And you'd be surprised how many young people now or children don't look after their parents when they get older. Some may have moved out. They may have gone to Vitilevu, some may have gone overseas. So these elderly people have no source of living. So we started a few years ago that if anybody was over the age of 70, we started giving them $30 a month. Today, we've reduced the age to 66, and they get $50 a month. At least they have some form of assistance. We also give money to, of course, disabled people who cannot work, or of course, who have disability issues. Access to justice, this is predominantly legal aid. As you know that a lot of people don't have access to justice or lawyers because they are poor. So the thinking is, just because you are poor, it does not mean you should not get access to the law. So if you are, for example, a lot of women, they have children, their husbands or spouses or boyfriends have left them, and they don't have any money for maintenance. So they have a right under the law to get maintenance for the child. So they go to legal aid, and they help them get maintenance. A lot of low-income families don't write a will. These people will help you write a will. Some people die without making a will, and there may be all these 5 children, and they all want to fight over the property. So legal aid will actually help you carry out the probate. If you get charged for criminal offense, if you're a low-income earner, you should have a right to a lawyer. These people will give you a lawyer for free. Education, like I mentioned, we have increased the funding for education quite significantly. Nobody today pays school fees. As you know, I've heard so many times in the past couple of years, so many people have said to me, they said, we wish we had free education in my time, at least I would have finished high school. So many people. So many people also said to me, said, there were about 5 or 7 of us in the family, and my father said, the girls can stay home, the boys can go to school because you'll get married and be looked after by a husband. So these are the kind of choices people made. So now we have everybody that can go to school without paying school fees. And as I said, the reason why we're doing that is because we're investing in you. If all of you in 5-10 years' time, you'll be comprising of the total adult population. If all of you have some form of qualification or some form of certification, you will be able to contribute a lot better to the country. The country will advance a lot quicker. We of course have the TEL scholarship. the TELS, which is a tertiary education loan scheme, and also the toppers, which is given out on merit. There's going to be a significant increase in that because we have something like about 16,000 students that are now at tertiary institutions and that are being funded by government. Health, we've increased the budget also, but our major problem in health is the lack of doctors and specialization. For example, last year we had allocated funding for 200 new doctors, but we could only hire 70. That's the only number of doctors that were available as graduates. There are 130 positions unfilled. We want more doctors. This is why you see the topper scholarship, we have more doctors, scholarship for doctors, science subjects, science lab, people, technicians, radiologists, all of those areas, we lack people. So we need to invest more in our people. So today, if you finished your MBBS and you become a doctor with government, if you want to do any specialist studies at FNU, we pay for you. It's free. Because we want to create more and more doctors and more specialization. In the meantime, the Minister for Health, as we speak, is currently in India with a couple of the civil permanent secretaries to recruit more doctors from there and other countries to make sure that we get more specialists. So people from Vanuatu shouldn't have to travel to Suva for ear, nose and throat specialists. These are the kind of areas that we do lack. And we know there's a lot of complaints, but we need to be able to ensure we get the people. Just because this young man does medicine, it doesn't mean that he can cut me open and play around with my heart and do open heart surgery the next day. It'll take him 10, 15 years to become a cardiac surgeon. So today we are paying the price for the lack of investment in our people. By unfortunately the previous government, they did not invest in our people. Infrastructure development, that of course is roads, bridges, jetties, electricity and water, and that's the total contribution. So you can see, in 2004, $1.3 billion was spent in these areas combined. Today we spend about $3.6 billion. Next please. Now this is very important, expenditure mix. You see, anybody that, even in your house, in your households, there are two types of expenses you have. One is what you call your day-to-day expenses. You buy, you spend money to buy food, you spend money to buy toilet paper, you travel, all these things are day-to-day expenses. The other expense is what you call, you may want to, for example, build an additional bedroom. That's what you call your capital expenditure. The other expenses are your day-to-day running. So like we have come here, the permanent secretary and the team, we've been here since yesterday. Some of us came by plane, some of us came by boat. We stayed last night at the hotel here. We're using the government vehicles for the fuel. That's all the expenses that the government needs to pay for, and that's what you call operating expenditure, your day-to-day running. Buying photocopying paper, all of those kind of things. The other expenditure that government has is your capital expenditure, which is money that we spend to build things. If this school gets another new classroom, or they get another new hall, it's capital expenditure. We build a new road, it's capital expenditure. So it's always good for government spending to have higher capital expenditure, which is in orange. You can see the difference. In 2004, out of all the money that government spent, 83% went into, it's gone yellow. 83% went into operating expenditure, day-to-day expenditure. So you don't have anything to show for it the following year. Only 17% went into capital. Today, 60% goes into operating and 40% goes into capital expenditure. It's like I've used the example, with the other schools. If all of us over here decide to have one big party tonight and we all want to go and eat Chicken Express, and say, let's go to Chicken Express and have some nice chicken and drinks and whatever, but we don't have the money. So we decide to go to the bank. All of us go to the bank and say, excuse me, Mr. Bank Manager, we want to have a big party at Chicken Express. Can you please lend us some money? He says, no problems, we'll give you the money. He gives the money, we all go around to Chicken Express, we have the party, we eat the chicken, we have the drinks, then we all go off to sleep. We wake up in the morning, the food is gone, the drinks are gone, but guess what's left? The debt. The debt is left. But if you all went to the bank and said to the bank manager, can you please lend us some money because we all want to put up a new building, and he says, no problem, you've got the money. You put up the building, the debt will be there, the building will be there. After a few years, the debt is gone, but the building is still there. Get my drift? So it's better to spend the money in terms of asset building, and that's what you call your capital expenditure, and we're spending a lot more in capital expenditure. This again just shows how much money we've been spending for roads, bridges and jetties. 2004 is 55 million, today is 527 million. I mentioned a bit of that. Water and energy, again you can see how much money we're spending for water. A lot of places in Fiji that did not have water, now they have water. A lot of places did not have electricity, they now have electricity. We also, of course, now we pay for electricity for those people who earn less than $30,000. If your home is connected to the FEA grid, and if you earn less than $30,000, the unit cost of electricity is 34 cents a unit. If you earn below $30,000 a year and use 95 kilowatts, we pay 17 cents on your behalf to FEA. But if you are rich, you have 5 air conditionings in your house and 1 swimming pool, you pay the full 34 cents. See, that's how it's done. Before, the approach was, oh, we need to keep electricity costs low, so everybody paid 24 cents. So FEA did not make money, there was not much investment, and even the rich person paid the same price as the poor person. Today, the rich person pays the right price. The poor person we help directly by paying for half the electricity cost. So that's what you call better utilization of government funds. That's what must happen. Okay, next one please. As I mentioned, the funding for education. You can see when free education was introduced, it shot up from 351 million to today 598 million. So over $500 million goes into education. People want, of course, more services, and we expect this line to go up more because there are people who may have joined or got TELS last year. So they still will be in university next year. But some of you will join TELS next year. The other people in the second year, they're still in the university system. So we expect this line here to go up higher at least for the next 3 years. And then it should reach an equilibrium over there somewhere. So that obviously is an investment in the future. Funding for health. Like I mentioned, we've increased the funding for health. You can see, say 2013 was 170 million. Now it's 286 million. But we need more people. We need more people. So please, if you want to study science subjects, you have a greater chance of getting a topper scholarship. Please become a lab technician if you don't want to become a doctor. Please become a radiologist. Please become a dietitian. Please become a speech therapist. You know, we had one of the schools, I think it was a super grammar school. There's something like 250 students there, about 25 schools. And a lot of them said, look, you know, we don't have enough counselors in schools. We need more counselors, and some of the teachers are doubling up as counselors. They're not trained in counseling. I said, I completely agree with you. We want to have more counselors. But I said, please put up your hands, those of you, when you finish high school, you want to go to university to become a counselor. Nobody did. Nobody did. You see, because a lot of people, your parents, family members, your community, don't see counseling as a profession. So they don't go to your son, become a counselor. They'll say, son, become an accountant, become a lawyer. So these are the priorities that people are giving. We need to change our mindset. We want more foresters. We want more marine scientists. And people say, oh, this guy's doing forestry, he's going to go around and walk in the bush. See, because our mindset needs to change. Because when the economy is growing, we need the right people to be there to make it grow even further. If we don't look after our forests, we don't have enough people doing forestry, how will we take advantage of growing our forestry industry? See, so these things are very, very critical. Now, this is what I talked about. You see, this is how much money government makes. From the top of this blue line all the way down is the operating revenue. That's the operating revenue. In other words, the revenue we generate. Out of which we spend this much in operating expenditure, and that's the savings. You can see how the savings has been growing. So when we have more savings, then we have to borrow less. So we have to run government very tight, We have to be mamangi, kanjus, stingy. To spend money in the right places, not in the wrong places. You can't have too many parties. Now, government debt. A lot of people talk about government debt without understanding government debt. So, you see, this is what you call, these figures here, is what you call the nominal sum. Nominal sum means the actual amount of debt. This here measures your debt to GDP ratio. Okay. Assuming your GDP of Fiji is $100. GDP is a gross domestic product. In other words, the value of your goods and services. At the moment in Fiji is about $10 billion. But assuming, just to make it easier for you, assuming our GDP is $100. It's $100, then we all decide, let's go and borrow $20 as a country. So what would you say is the debt to GDP ratio? GDP is 100 and you borrow $20. What percentage of 100 is 20? What percentage of 100 is 20? Come on, maths. I don't want a teacher to give me an answer. Let's see which school gets it. Sorry, we said 20%? 20%? We'll give you a free bottle of water as your prize. So, you would say your debt to GDP ratio is 20%, right? You got $100 and you went and borrowed $20. Your debt to GDP ratio is 20%. In other words, you borrowed 20% of what you have. Now then, our GDP increases. It becomes $500. But we say, oh, we got $500, let's go and borrow $50. What's your debt to GDP ratio? 10%. Thank you very much. Another bottle of water. 10%. 10%. So you see, the issue is this. Even though we are now borrowing $50 instead of $20, your debt to GDP ratio is only 10%. Even though, so that $50 and $20 is these figures here. That's the nominal sum. But as a percentage of your GDP, one is 20%. So you borrow less, but your GDP is lower, so it's higher, 20%. And the GDP is higher at $500, and even though you borrowed $50, it's only 10%. So the figure to watch is this, not the nominal sum. So if this line is coming down, that means you're doing well. In other words, your debt to GDP ratio is coming down. So you see over here, even though we borrowed $3.1 billion here, this is in 2009, $3.1 billion, your debt to GDP ratio is 55.8%. Over here, even though you borrowed $4.5 billion, right? It's only 46.2. It has come down. So even though this figure is higher than that figure, in nominal terms, as a percentage of GDP has come down. In other words, the wealth of the country has increased. So, even though the actual figure sums is higher, but your debt to GDP ratio has gone down. And I'll show you later on what it means. Now, so just go back up. So, you see, this is our target, to continue to grow this line downwards, go down. In other words, debt to GDP ratio should come down. It's gone up here. Why has it gone up? Sorry? Where are you? What did you say? No, say it. Yes. Cyclone Winston. Because like I said, we had to go out and borrow $220 million more. If Winston had not occurred, this line would have kept on going down. So these are the kind of things that we need to take into account when you measure debt to GDP ratio. You can ask me the question on that later. So just by comparison, how are the other countries doing as far as debt is concerned? Look at Japan. Their debt to GDP ratio is 239.2%. In other words, they're borrowing 239.2% more than what they actually have in the GDP. USA, 107.4%. Let's look at comparable countries. Maldives, Seychelles. These are island economies like ours. One is closer to Africa, Seychelles, and Maldives is closer to Sri Lanka and India. Their debt to GDP ratio is 81.5, 68.6%. Nauru is 65%. Mauritius, a lot of people talk about Mauritius and compare Fiji with Mauritius. They're similar because they have sugarcane as a major source of revenue for a number of years. They also brought in indentured laborers from British India. And they used to be, the economy used to perform far less than ours in terms of the economic output. But they've beaten us in the past number of decades. They've done well. I had the fortune to go there earlier this year. What they have done is they made a strategic move, like what we are doing. They decided to spend a lot of money, borrow a lot of money to fix up the infrastructure. They're much smaller than us. They're about 2,000 square kilometers. Just to compare it, Viti Levu is about 10,000 square kilometers. They have a population of about 1.2 million people. We don't even have 1 million. Right? But they spent a lot of money, a lot more four-lane roads, a lot more infrastructure, invested in ITC. Why? Because they're close to Africa. So, a lot of people think Africa is not safe. So they're attracting investment into Mauritius. A lot of people, a lot of companies are based in Mauritius to service Africa. So they build all these ITC hubs, they put up all these buildings and said to companies, come to Mauritius. For next 5 years you don't pay tax, we'll give you free internet connection, you come and set up your business. What does it do? It creates jobs. It means that they pay taxes after a few years. It makes them a hub. They've partnered with Indian hospital companies. A lot of Africans, they don't get the medical service in their country, they all come to Mauritius to get their medical treatment. When they come to Mauritius to get the medical treatment, what do? They stay at the hotels. They pay taxes. They eat their food. They pay VAT. So that's how the economy grows. So they made a strategic move to spend lots of money. That's why their debt to GDP ratio is much higher than ours. But it will pay off in the long run for them. In the same way, we need to be strategic. We need to be able to spend money in the right places so we make things productive for us. Samoa, of course, is higher than us. These are the countries that are lower than us. It's interesting though, Australia's got a fairly high level of debt to GDP ratio, even though they had one of the highest levels of mineral resources. And they ran a surplus budget for a number of years. And that's the other countries that you see. So ladies and gentlemen, that's the last slide here. The economy is set to grow by 3.8% in the short to medium term. Very good prospects for the medium term growth. Increased private sector investment, a lot of optimism. We are very stringent with our fiscal management. Fiscal management is government spending. When people talk about your fiscal debt to GDP ratio, they talk about your fiscal policy, it means government policy. Monetary policy is done by the Reserve Bank. Fiscal policy is by government. If you see the word fiscal, that's what it means. Government managing finances. You have a sustainable debt position. There's high levels of capital expenditure. We have broad-based growth. We want to expand it more. We think there's a lot more potential for ITC. You know, today in Fiji, there's something like 500,000 smartphones in usage. We reduced the duty to 0 for smartphones. So more of you can have more phones. There are more SIM cards, live SIM cards in Fiji than the actual number of people. So obviously there are people who have more than 2 SIM cards, or more than 1 SIM card I should say. But we also know that connectivity is an issue. At the moment, I was here, the reception is not that good. And I think a lot of that needs to be improved upon. We've just spent about $7 million, US million dollars, to land a submarine cable in Savu Savu. Why? Because we want Vanua Levu to have high-speed internet, high-speed interconnectivity. So we can also drive jobs here. We have in Suva what we call call centers and back-end processing. So people are setting up companies in Suva to answer phone calls from Australia. So somebody in Australia has a banking query or insurance query, They ring up a customer, maybe living in Melbourne, and ring up their bank. The call is answered by some Fijian young person sitting there answering the call. Says, "Hello, sir, can I help you?" They do that because it's a lot more cost effective to be based in a country like Fiji. We want to encourage more of those kind of jobs. It means more opportunities for you. And those call centers operate 24/7. So we think there's a lot of opportunities in the ITC sector. Our foreign reserves is at an all-time high, and inflation, which is the cost that I showed you, is set to stabilize below 3% in the medium term. So, ladies and gentlemen, we have, of course, today, I'm sure you have some questions or you want to make some submissions. I'd like you to keep it short, please, because I have to also catch a flight. Otherwise, I'll miss my flight. I want to go and watch the Crusaders and the Chiefs game. So, but the point is this. You see, like the Crusaders and the Chiefs game, we are actually spending $2 million to get them to come and play in Fiji. Why are we doing that? We are doing that because it gives Fiji exposure. There are literally millions of people who actually watch the game. In South Africa, in Australia, in New Zealand. So when they watch the game, they see all these advertisements for Fiji come along. It's promoting Fiji. It's also showing how potential rugby players, about how professional rugby can be played. Rugby earnings is becoming an earner for us, a revenue earner for us. It also promotes Fiji. It gets the Crusaders has a large following of fans. So they come to Fiji, they catch Fiji Airways, they come to Suva, they stay at the hotel, they go and drink our beer, they eat our food, they pay VAT, they pay taxes, and we collect money. So there's a number of things that are done by bringing them into Fiji. Now, you may have some ideas. After this, you may decide to go back as a class and say, look, we have some ideas. Please don't hesitate to send us your submissions, but please do so by Monday. Because you're the last school, unfortunately, or last group of students, you don't have that much time. And we can, of course, take your submissions through email. Don't post it, probably get that after a long time. Unless you're visiting Suva, Monday you can drop it off at our office. But I suggest that you email it to us. So I'll open up the floor now. For those of you who have any comments or suggestions, please stand up. Please don't hesitate to ask any questions, make any suggestions. I just very quickly want to tell you some of the issues that have been raised by some of the schools. We have received a lot of complaints about bus companies, saying that the buses, they don't actually have good buses, or they don't necessarily take all the students at the right time, or they don't come on time, or the drivers are rude to the students. If they are the issues, please tell us. We pay them $21 million. So we want their services to improve because you are the customers. You are the clients. So we want you to benefit from it. There's no point in us paying them all that money when you, the customers, don't actually benefit from it. We also had in the same school, in the first school we went to, Vasist Buni High School, where had all the schools from Seru and Namosi. One of the young ladies stood up and said, you know, I want to become a doctor, MBBS. It's a 5-year course. Can you please make it 3 years so I can become a doctor really quickly? It doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way. It's the quality of education. It's not just the paper. So the other message that I also have is that we really want you to pursue an area of study that you feel very passionate about. Some of you may not want to become a doctor, engineer. Some of you may want to become a very good carpenter. We have technical colleges available. In Fiji at the moment, there's a huge shortage of good carpenters. I don't mean the guy who just come and hammer something, but good carpenters, good tile layers. Shortage of electricians. Electricians are being paid about $12, $13 an hour. When I was in Penang with a group of students, there's one, I went around because they're a much smaller group, and because they're a bit shy and nobody was talking, so I went around and said to all of them, okay, what do you want to do when you finish high school? So this young man said, I want to become a carpenter, and I really encouraged him, because that was his passion, you could tell. So you should study what you feel passionate about. Don't study what somebody else tells you to study. If you want to do forestry, do it because you'll become a good forester. If you want to do electrical engineering or you want to become an electrician, do it because you'll become a good electrician. A lot more people will come to you and say, this guy is a good electrician or this lady is a good electrician. Do that. because that will mean that you will become not just good at it, but we'll get a whole range of professional skill sets that at the moment is lacking in Fiji. You know, in Fiji at the moment, we have some construction companies, they have brought tradespeople from Philippines, from Indonesia, from Bangladesh, because there's a shortage of these people. Good people. I don't mean anybody who can just lay a tile. I mean, you can lay crooked tiles. You need professionals. You need the finishing of the buildings to be done professionally. So these are the kind of skill sets that's missing. So don't also look down on any profession. Every profession is just as important as the next one. Okay, so I'll open up the floor now.
So recently there has been lots of issues regarding the medical services provided in Labasa. What is the government doing to improve the health services provided in Labasa?
Okay, thank you. You can sit down. It's okay.
So,
There are two aspects to medical services. One of them, like I said, is about not having access to the right doctors, the specialists. So, you know, for example, I know there was one particular case in Labasa where a gentleman had an ear infection, very bad ear infection. So they had to get access to an ear, nose and throat specialist, and they had to take them to Suva. So the fact is, if you had an ENT specialist here, they could be treated here. There's a lack of specialist services. The other issue about health services is the people who are currently there who may not be doing their job properly. We do get a lot of complaints. You see, that is unfortunately a problem within the civil service. So one of the things you may have heard us, you would have read in the media or in the papers, that we are carrying out a reform of the civil service. We are saying that people need to be paid the right amount of salary, we're also reviewing people's salaries, but we're also saying that people need to perform. So we're putting everybody on contracts, 3-year contract, 5-year contract. If you don't perform according to the contract, you need to go. Unfortunately, there are some people, some politicians saying civil servants should have a job for life. That's really silly. Because as far as we are concerned, all of you are the customers of the civil servants. There's an attitude in a lot of the civil servants, they don't see you as a customer. They don't see you as a client. They think, I'm the man. Right? You come here, I'll serve you when I feel like it. Completely wrong attitude. So there are two aspects. One is the access to the specialist care and the skill sets, which we need to build up. We need to get specialists from overseas. The other one is the level of service that is provided by the current crop of civil servants. So we are addressing that issue, the second issue, by trying to get better civil servants, recruit people on merit. A lot of civil servants in the past have been recruited without merit. They knew somebody, or because they came from the right, ethnic group, religious group, or they knew somebody in the system. In one of the ministries, when we were appointed, unfortunately I have to say this, in one of the ministries, people used to get jobs because they used to give half of their salary to the permanent secretary for the first few months. A couple of women had to sleep with him to get the job. That was the state of affairs in the civil service. So it's been going on for decades, and we are trying to now fix that up. And unfortunately, some of these politicians are opposed to reforms because they just want the civil servants' votes. We are doing things not based on votes. We are doing, like I said, for the long-term goal. We want to reform the service for the next 15, 20, 30 years. It becomes a lot more relevant and becomes a lot more service-driven. They are the two things we are doing.
Honourable Minister. So I would like to comment on your government assistance that have been rendered for so long, particularly for free education. However, sir, my concern is, as a student, a high number of absentees, which points to some of the parents and guardians with failure to take ownership of their children's education. I take you back, sir, your attention to 6 PWD. Sir, that abuse, I'm afraid to say that it's happening in schools now. My question is, sir, is there any measures to penalize parents and guardians to some extent, and to some extent students, that are abusing the assistance given by your government because they are also abusing the taxpayers' money? Thank you, sir.
Okay, there are two aspects to that. The first one is whether we have any regulations, any laws to discipline or regulate parents who don't encourage the children to school. We don't. It's very difficult to do so, in practical terms. If, for example, a child does not go to school because the parents don't send them to school, what do you want us to do? You go and arrest them, charge them, you know what I mean? It becomes very difficult. So a lot of it is to do with attitude. So, as they say, you can take a horse to the trough, but you can't make it drink. Right? So you can take the horse there to the water, but you can't put its head down and make it drink. They have to do the drinking themselves. So as far as we are concerned, we're creating the enabling environment. We have to do that. And hopefully in the change of minds and attitudes, people will also change their views in respect of education. So as we said, there is absolutely no excuse for nobody in Fiji now to not finish high school. You get paid all the way up to year 13. The second issue that you raised about the abuse of funds, etc., if that is happening, please let me know specifically. Because you're right, a few years ago, this school bus voucher, we found that some teachers, together with some senior students in a couple of schools, were photocopying it and selling it at half the price. So we still have a lot of people who try and steal from the system, unfortunately. We still have some people who get paid, but they sleep on the job, or they don't do their job properly. We have to make sure that these people do the right thing. This is why you need to have, things like contracts. You need to have what they call KPIs, key performance indicators, and assessments carried out on a continuous basis. Before you do that, I've got some bottles of water for you.
Good afternoon, sir. My name is Emily Mbulelani of year 13. I represent the students of my school, which is Lakewood Secondary. Firstly, I wish to thank the government of the day for tasseling our main highway road. It is now tasseled and we love and enjoy traveling from Lakewood to Labasa. Sir, the Lakewood community in Bua does not have access to television at large. There is no reception as far as FBC or Fiji TV is concerned. We appeal for installation of repeaters so that we can also enjoy local as well as international news, plus live games like sevens, soccer, and many other educational programs. This will even help us do better in our classroom. In the past, we had access to Fijian through Sky Pacific, and even it has been sold to Digishell. We have no access to Fijian news anymore. We are now deprived of many services as Sky Pacific is also expensive. I feel that we should be given the same privilege as those who are using the opportunity now. We are less fortunate as we are not the same in terms of financial well-being to pay our monthly Sky bills. With the installation of a BC post or TV, rather would enhance our potential and capabilities to venture out into the outer world, just as the students in the urban or cities. Hope we are given due consideration on this subject. Thank you, sir.
I don't know how many of you know about digital television. We started digital television services. We already started that in the Suvarnasori corridor, and test runs are being done in the Western Division, and it will also come to Vanuatu very soon. What it means is that we rearrange the frequency. So with frequency, when you get digital television, it also enhances the quality of the pictures. But apart from that, it also means there are more free-to-air television stations available. So at the moment, Fiji TV has got 2 channels now. FBC has got 2 channels and Mai has 1. So there's 5 channels free-to-air. In other words, you don't pay for it. That's available now. And we'll be making that available throughout Fiji. So you should expect television coverage in all those areas at least by December of this year or by January of next year. You'll get that. Because there are other parts, for example, in Raki and places, they don't have it. One of FBC's antenna went down in Cyclone Winston in Raki. So they did not build it because they knew digital television is about to come along. So that's being done. Okay? Thank you.
I, Vijendra Kumar, on behalf of Labasa College, I would like to thank the People's Government of the Day for their initiatives in conducting sessions and taking views of students while compiling the 2017-2018 budget. The Honorable Attorney General, my question is that there is a shortage of experienced maths and physics teachers in the schools. As a result, the students are suffering. Is there any possibilities that in the next budget we can cater for re-employment of retired experienced teachers in this field to meet up the needs and demands for current students? Thank you.
Thank you. As you know that government implemented a policy of retiring civil servants once they reach the age of 55. One of the major reasons we did that so people like you can get employed. A few years ago, just I think about 3 years ago, the Ministry of Education recruited teacher graduates who had graduated as teachers but had not been employed for about 3 or 4 years. The only way we were able to do that was by actually giving more money in the budget, and also because those who retired made way for them. Last year we gave an annual budget of for 200 teachers in primary schools and an additional 100 teachers for secondary schools. The whole idea is to get more teachers, improve the teacher-student ratio. We need to do that. We accept that. In some of the schools, the ratio is much lower. Regarding the issue of science and maths teachers, the issue there, of course, is that not many of the students who actually go out and do Bachelor of Education focus on science and maths. Everybody wants to teach geography, history, those other soft subjects that are not science, non-science subjects, I should say. So we need to encourage more of you who are going to do education or do a Bachelor of Education, do more maths and science subjects. In respect of whether those people will be recruited, you cannot have blanket approvals. It's actually done by Ministry of Education. Ministry of Education determines the needs. So if you're retired, if you reach 55, the ministry needs to make a call on whether that technical skill set is required or not. It's essentially the re-engagement of civil servants. If there is a particular technical skill set that's unavailable, then they can actually re-recruit them. That call is made by the Ministry of Education.
Attorney General and Acting Prime Minister, Mr. Ayaz Said Qayyum. Sir, I, as a recent student of Holy Family Secondary School, my concern is since the current government is loaning so much millions of dollars, which we, the young generation, will pay in years to come. But we don't see much infrastructure development in health services, hospitals, the conditions of roads, etc.
I think you had that question written before I showed this to you. Like I said, that in the health sector, the main issue is that we don't have enough doctors. We don't have enough specialists. And that's one major area that we need to be able to improve upon. We've allocated funding to recruit more doctors and specialists, but there is not enough people, so we're now recruiting people from offshore. In respect of actual services itself, the young lady who asked the question, a lot of it is to do also with the attitude of the people who actually run the hospital. We've had some issues in Labasa, where some doctors are not necessarily doing the job, the way that they treat the patients. We've seen that. It's got nothing to do directly with the budget as such. Now, in respect of infrastructure, as I said, for decades, you should probably ask your parents and your grandparents, what kind of infrastructure spending did the previous governments do? Very little. I don't know how many of you recently been to places like Nandi, but in Nandi, for example, we built a 4-lane road coming out of the airport, going towards Matintar, Namaka, up to Denarau. One of the things we have done is that traditionally when people built roads in Fiji, you say this was the road. When they had water pipes, they put the water pipes underneath the road. So when there was a water leakage in the pipe, if the pipe burst, nobody would know about it. But the ground would get soft, and the big trucks come along, the cane trucks come along, they go on the road, you get potholes. The road has no integrity. Then eventually somebody will realize, after they've done the patching for a long period of time, they say, oh, the water pipe is burst. So then they'll dig up the road to fix up the pipe. When they dig up the road to fix up the pipe, the road does not get fixed. You see, this is what you call lack of smart planning. lack of smart infrastructure building. So this 4-lane road that we've done in Nandi, we've taken out the water pipes, put it on the side of the road. All the FEA cables that was overhead, we've taken them down and put them underground. So next time a cyclone comes, there's nothing to blow down. It's all underground. The TFL line is underground. And if the electricity cable needs to be replaced, if the water pipe starts leaking, you don't dig up the road to fix up the pipe. So that obviously costs money, costs more money. For example, when we were planning for this 4-laning of the road, it cost us over $20 million more. They said the option is this. If you put the electricity cables underground, it'll cost you about $20 million more. Now the point is, in Cyclone Winston, nearly 6,000 kilometers of electrical cables came down. We put them back up. God forbid we have another cyclone, go back down, put it back up. Another cyclone, go back down, put it back up again. So that's what eventually you end up wasting money. But to put the cables underground costs a lot more money. But once you've done it, then you don't have this problem of up and down. So you see, this is how we're spending infrastructure. What you have just said, that debt level is going up, it's not. I've just shown this to you. If you look at the debt to GDP ratio, yes, in nominal terms, nominal term debt is coming up. But in GDP ratio terms, it's coming down. So your future, what would you rather have? You want to have a useless road and no electricity, but have low debt level? Then you'll complain, you won't have the potential to grow. So it's a question of managing your debt. If you read the Fiji Times, for once they've done something right. The Fiji Times, one of the articles, they had this interview with the World Bank rep in Fiji. World Bank is opening up an office in Fiji. And he said that the debt situation of Fiji is very manageable. It's like I showed to you. Our debt to GDP ratio is going down. This is not the figure to be concerned about. You see the figure over here, 3.1 billion, but debt to GDP ratio is 55.8. Borrowing more, but debt to GDP ratio is lower. That means the economy is growing. If you go back to the next slide, the example that I gave you, country like Mauritius, they're kicking our butt. Why? Because their government was smarter. 10, 20 years, 15 years ago, they invested, so the debt to GDP ratio is higher. But you don't get the people and the politicians talking about debt to GDP ratio. In Fiji, somebody got hold of this idea, so debt levels are very high. They don't understand. These people, when you go to their country, they're very positive. Their debt to GDP ratio is actually higher than this. But they know that they have to spend the money in the right places to be able to grow the country. Everybody in Labasa wants to have a new airport. Let me give you an example. Your airport is built between the bend of a river. Right? The runway is like this. Which smart person built the runway between the bend of a river? See, they did not think. On the other side of the river, you can see flat land as far as your eyes can see. So when you build infrastructure, you need to think 20 years, 30 years down the track. What we are doing for you is actually helping you make sure that your debt levels, when you become older, will be very less. Because we would have built all this infrastructure. So today, the cost of flying to Vanuatu is high, some people say. Why? Because we have got an ATR-72 plane that cannot land full load even in Labasa. Why? Because your runway is too short. So if your runway was at the right length, or you had enough land reserved, you could have very easily extended the runway. You could have had a 737 landing here. It's true. A lot of you want to travel from Vanuatu, I know. But the cost of your air ticket would come down. You see, when you have a plane that cannot run at full load, that means you burn a lot of fuel to get a few people across. That means the cost of your ticket will go up. Right? It's like you, if all of you decide to go and charter a bus, if only 10 of you charter a bus, the cost per head will be a lot more. But if you fill up the entire bus with 60 people, the cost per head will be less. So now we have to spend money and borrow money to go and build a brand new airport. To find a place where there's enough runway that one day, who knows, an A380 may land in Vanuatu. That's how you have to think. Singapore, the government thought that way. Today, they are kicking everybody's butt. Their GDP was lower than ours. They used to come to Fiji to learn from us. Today, we all go, oh wow, God, Singapore is great. You know the size of Singapore? 700, little over 700 square kilometers, sorry. Now, Uni is about 425 square kilometers. Singapore is 700. But look at Singapore today. Because their leaders had a vision. They thought 30 years down the track. They thought 40 years down the track. They took lots of debt. They built it all up. But the main question is the money being spent in the right places strategically? That's the main issue. Next, please.
General, respective members of the budget consultation team, teachers and students from various schools, a very good afternoon to you all. On behalf of the Nandongo Central College and Nandongo District as a whole, I would like to do a small presentation in which I believe it is important for the Nandongo family. What can the government do to solve road and transportation problem in Nandongo area? Sir, transportation is a major concern for the students of Nandongo. The school accommodates students of 29 different villages and settlements, and with fixed schedule for the bus services, the students face a lot of difficulty. The last group of students, that is the Bisongo students, board the bus from school at 5:30 p.m. The approximate arrival time at home is around 8:45 p.m. Adding to these problems, with limited buses coming from Labasa, even the nearby students from the vicinity of Langa and Numbu are left behind, as by the time the bus reaches our school, it is almost full. The teachers go out of their way to drop them. On the other hand, some of our students traveling by the school boat have to cross roads which are surrounded by bushes and have overgrown grass on the road itself. This is another major concern, especially for the safety of our female students. On behalf of the students and the community at large, I humbly request if more RSL permit can be approved to provide better services in interiors of Nandongo, and these vehicles must go through proper inspections so that services can be rendered smoothly. So, finally request for a valley bridge in Wanikoro River to cater for students traveling in the outboat to school. This will also facilitate the difficulties faced by the financially poor people to visit the major government centers in Nandongo, since currently they have to hire a vehicle for very long distance, which becomes a financial burden to them. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Please leave that with our staff. We'll have a look at that. We'll give you written submissions. Those of you making submissions, in particular such requests, please give it to our staff. They're recording it. We'll also want you to give your contact details, so we at least are able to get back to you to give you the feedback whether what can be done, what cannot be done, and what will be done. Okay? Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, we have 10 minutes. Thank you. Ladies first.
The Honorable Minister, I as the Head Girl of Tambia Sanatan College would like to raise a suggestion. Could a telecenter be put up at Tambia Sanatan College for the convenience of the people, as the students, youths and the people of Tambia community have to travel far to use computers and access to internet, as it becomes quite expensive for them. Perhaps it would be a big relief if a telecenter is put up for the convenience of the people.
Thank you. We'll take a note of it. Do you have a phone connection there, mobile phone? You have good connection? Okay. Now, the reason why I ask is because when you have good mobile phone connection, then you can get very good internet connection too if you put internet. But we'll take a note of that. Thank you.
Good afternoon, sir. We at Immaculate Conception College in Solevo are affected a lot by the poor road conditions that we have. We are only 15 minutes away from Nambawalu, where the highway begins, and we believe that it will not be a difficult task to at least pursue that extra bit of road from Nambawalu to Solevo to make our coming and going to school more enjoyable. So, our request is to please consider sealing the road from Nambawalu to Solevo and if possible, beyond, which will be of great help to the children of Solevo. Our second proposal is for the provision of electricity by FEA to also reach us. One of our main villages is Buya, about 10 minutes away from Solevo, and they are enjoying the luxury of having electricity. We too, at Solevo, would like to also enjoy the privilege of having electricity so that we can fully utilize our resources that require electricity, such as computers. Our final request is, if possible, the government can negotiate with an internet provider that can give us better connectivity, because in Solevo, our progress in terms of doing internet research is very much hindered by the very poor network. Our teachers and admin staff have to go down to the industrial arts workshop, which is quite a long walk down a steep hill, just to get a network signal to be able to access emails and do updates on FEMIS. Thank you, and hope our proposal are looked into with favorable consideration.
Okay, thank you for that. Please hand it over to our staff, the Ministry of Economy staff. They'll get that off you. Please make sure when you hand it over, you have a phone contact details or whatever contact details of your school. We can get back to you.
Honorable Attorney General and relevant ministerial officers, my submission today will be based on recreational facilities, specifically on sports facilities. So, compared to Suva, in the north we have equal talented people, or students, or youths in the north as in comparison with Suva. So, sir, my submission today is for if you could upgrade or develop or construct sports facilities such as sports academies, so that you can develop the talent in the north, and so the youth in the north don't have to travel to Suva and there's incurred costs. So that's all, sir.
Okay. No, it's a very valid point. I think one of the ones that can be done fairly quickly is some sort of indoor facility. We've recognized it too. Suva was the only one that had all-weather track, as you know, in the National Stadium. We now have an all-weather track in Lautoka. And I think, of course, there is no, for example, indoor facility in Lautoka. We're talking about that. Maybe that's something that we can look at for Vanua Levu, in particular for Labasa area. The main issue always is for these places that getting the right land, so we are able to construct it in the right place. But your point is very valid. I agree with you.